Hi, welcome back to Frank's Final Review. This week we're going to review a Bob Marley and the Wailers album called Survival. I've been very fond of this record for a long time, and you may have seen the recent Bob Marley movie, One Love. So, there's been, Bob Marley's definitely been in the media lately, with the movie, etc. And my family and I, we saw the movie. It was very entertaining, and there were at various points where we were, just grooving in our seats and singing along, and Bob's music still very powerful, and people of all ages. There were, younger people, middle-aged, and older folks as well, who obviously, everyone's still enjoying Bob's music. So it was kind of fun to be there and see that. So I recommend everyone checking that movie out. It's a great movie. So getting back to this record, Bob Marley's Survival. This was his 11th studio album, going back to his first studio album, The Wailing Wailers, back in 1965. So by this time, this album was recorded in January and February of 1979. So Bob had been recording professionally for 14 years. He'd been doing it a very long time, so he was very seasoned, and we can hear that maturity on this record. So I want to talk a little bit about going on behind the scenes leading up to the recording. Bob had just came back to Jamaica after being away for 14 months. And that was the period during, the movie, the One Love movie basically covers that period when Bob self-exiled to London, essentially wrote the album to Exodus, and toured, and before he came back. So he comes back to Jamaica, he's away for 14 months. He finishes a studio at 56 Hope Road, his main hangout. Essentially, it's a compound, but he finishes the studio, and it's known as Tough Gong Studios. So Bob has a studio at 56 Hope Road, and so that's where the album Survival comes from. It's Bob's first recording, his first album, the first Bob Marley and the Wailers album, at Tough Gong Studios at 56 Hope Road. They did record other artists and other albums there, but this was the first by Bob at Tough Gong. Survival is the first album with all new songs up to this point. In previous Bob Marley albums, you might see a song or two that had been recorded in the early period that they would re-record for the album. So this is the first album with all new songs. And the album originally was titled Black Survival, but I guess the powers that be, Chris Blackwell and executives at Island and distributors, etc., determined that would sort of alienate people, and people might give the perception that it was for Black people only. So there, again, this idea that there was some institutional racism in terms of creating these. Okay, let's name the record. What's going to be the best title, for the highest revenue? Basically, that's probably what that came down to, right? So, and the cover, the cover of the album, featuring flags from Africa, was designed by Neville Garrick, a very close friend of Bob's. And basically, he says that the flags kind of represent the idea of Africa Unite. Garrick knows the album is called Survival, but in his mind, it's still Black Survival. He doesn't have to see Black on the album, but that's the way that he perceives the album. And then Garrick, he asked himself, how do I represent Jamaica, Trinidad, Black people in America, and Brazil? And then he asked, what flags do I use for that? Like, does he use those national flags? And then he says, but we all left through slavery. We all left Africa through slavery. So the slave ships represent the Blacks outside of Africa. So, you know, again, this album is about unification, and so Garrick, you know, he's creating the modern Africa, if you will, the modern political Africa, but he's also showing the roots of, you know, sort of the Pan American Africans who you know, left via slavery, and so that's what the slave ship represents, the Africans who came to the New World, right? So kind of really an interesting concept there. I want to jump right into the record, and the record starts off with a track called "So Much Trouble in the World." It's a really great track, and before this track, you could hear Bob say, "Record this." You know, I heard something, I knew, you know, sometimes these things are left on records. It's kind of interesting, but I went back, I dropped the needle again, and I thought I could hear "Record this." So it was probably Bob, you know, in the studio. So much trouble in the world, and it's you know, it's like a song. I mean, think about our world today. This was recorded in 1979, so 45 years later, you know, we're you know, there's so much more trouble in the world, right? So this song still resonates today. It's got some really nice funk. You know, there's a really nice reggae groove here. Obviously, there's a really, again, there's this like underlying funk pulse, if you will. It's got a really great sound, and I forgot to mention this, but equally as important is this record is a half speed remaster, and so I wanted to touch base on that real quick. And this is a mastering certificate that came with this particular album, but essentially this rare and specialized technique, the half speed remastering, transforms. I'm reading this right from the certificate. Transforms difficult to cut high-end frequencies into relatively easy to cut mid-range frequencies. The result is a cut with excellent high frequency response and very solid and stable stereo images. In short, half-speed mastering produces a master of the highest quality that enables the pressing plant to produce a superlative record. So it's interesting they provide that certificate in there. And it also came with a half-speed OBI, if you will. So, you know, I noticed, though, right away the sound on this record was very impressive. Great soundstage, just great clarity. You know, there's a bridge here in this song, and Bob, the bridge, you know, asks the question, so you think you have found a solution? The bridge is just kind of a nice change. I mean, you know, you've got this great, you know, funk groove, funk reggae groove, if you will, but the bridge is pretty cool. You know, I could hear some interesting, very subtle synthesizer underneath, and the groove is just, it's so polyrhythmic, right? I mean, you've got the main pulse, but you've got all this other stuff going on. There's some percussion and some other cool stuff. Probably a great dance number, and then the track fades out. So just a really strong way to open this record. The next song is called Zimbabwe. This one is got a slower pace than the opener. Some of the lines stick out. And I'm going to mention, you know, lyrically, this is a very strong album, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some lyrics that stuck out to me. Here, we're going to fight for our rights. And, you know, African nations were gaining independence from colonial rule at this time. And, you know, Bob was very much about unifying, you know, it was really all about unity for all Africans. And then he, you know, they talk in lyrics, soon we'll find out who is the real revolutionaries, and I don't want my people to be tricked by the mercenaries. So that's kind of an interesting idea. The next song on the album is called Top Rankin, and there's some really nice guitar leads early here. There's some horns, which I noticed right away. You know, again, we can extrapolate messages from then to today, you know, in terms of our foreign policy, the United States foreign policy. They don't want us to unite. You know, top ranking, are you skanking, I'm sorry. But kind of an interesting tune, you know, which segues right into the next song, Babylon System. And this is, you know, one of my favorite Bob Marley songs. When I first heard this song on and same with So Much Trouble in the World, on the Songs for Freedom box set that I had on CD, that included the blue disc. I wish the newer box that included that blue disc. I guess there were some licensing quagmires with that, but anyway, this song, Babylon System, it almost has, it's you know, you can hear acoustic guitar. Obviously Bob always had an acoustic guitar with him. He was always singing and playing. This one almost has, you know, it's got that Rasta chant style, and you can hear like a bird chirping that's kind of mixed in early, and you know, so you have these sounds of nature. Some of the lines stick out, you know, Babylon System is the vampire sucking the children day by day. Bob also sings, building church and university, deceiving the people continually. You know, it's like this, the idea that, you know, Bob has this sort of, you know, he's leery about, you know, Western capitalism and, you know, the sort of, you know, the church and, you know, like he's seeing more problems, right? He's seeing famine and, you know, he's seeing environmental destruction. I mean, he's seeing the system is dangerous, right? And think about where we are again 45 years later. Think about the environmental consequences that we're dealing with, and again, it's sort of in this post-industrial revolution, right? You know, we're still in the Babylon system. It's such a great message, right? So Bob is taking a stand. He's saying, you know, maybe this system isn't as great as you think it is, right? Like, so it's kind of cool. You know, tell the children the truth, and you know, that's part of the chorus. You know, I like the song. I mentioned that, you know, it is in sort of the Rasta chant style, and there, you know, there are a couple other songs early on that you know, lead up to this style, and two I want to talk about briefly. There was a song recorded in 1968 by Bob, and it's probably one of his most famous songs, Selassie is the Chapel. And if you've seen his documentary called Marley, it's very prominent in that documentary. It's a beautiful song. I do have a copy on CD. I'd like to, you know, I guess only 268 copies were ever, you know, produced when it was released. Very small number, and they do circulate on Discogs. But just a beautiful song. I feel like that's one of Bob's best songs. And then, and so that was recorded in 1968. And then 5 years later, the song Rasta Man Chant, again, you know, in that sort of Rasta style, if you will, because Bob was a Rastafarian. He paid tribute to his Rasta heroes, if you will, through music. So Selassie is the Chapel, Rasta Man Chant, and I feel like Babylon System is a continuation of that style. So it's pretty cool. The last song on side one is called Survival, the title track, and you can hear Aston Barrett's bass, very prominent early on. You know, Bob sings, "We're the survivors, yes, the black survival." You know, there's more horns, and you can hear some organ underneath. And he, you know, he talks about essentially, again, almost a continuation of the previous song. You know, it's like living in a world that forces lifelong insecurity. You know, he talks about nuclear energy and famine, and again, it's just, you know, 45 years later, we're still dealing with those same issues. So pretty cool stuff here. Flipping over the record to side two, we open on side two. We open with Africa Unite, and you know, I kind of noticed this one was, to me, had almost a commercial vibe on this one. You know, like the music almost, it just sounded, you know, like just a commercial, you know, like a commercial Bob Marley song, basically. But again, some powerful messages, even still, like, you know, Bob sings, "We're moving out of Babylon." So again, it's this idea, you know, let's get out of here, basically. Let's evolve out of this Babylonian system, right? The next song is called "One Drop," and this song opens with some really nice I3s singing in the background. The I3s, Judy Mowat, Rita Marley, Griffiths. I know her last name is Griffiths. So, but they sound really nice when they sound really nice when this song opens. And again, the lyrics, resisting against the system. There's some nice percussion. Again, some almost polyrhythmic stuff. You can hear some tapping, some subtle horns. Bob sings, "I know Jah will never let us down." It's a pretty good tune. The next song, "Ride Natty Ride," This one again has a kind of a mellow groove, and I could hear some harmonica and some subtle horns. And one line stuck out to me, and we've heard it actually on an older Bob song. One line in particular, it says, "So the stone that the builder refused shall be the head cornerstone." So that's a line from a previous song that Bob wrote about. Essentially, he went to his family, the Marleys. They had a construction business, and he wanted a loan, a small loan to help his distribution, and they basically shut him down. So I think it was a song about that. So interesting history there. Again, subtle polyrhythms, and Bob sings Natty Dread Rides Again. The next song is called Ambush, and there's a real nice funk reggae groove here. Again, I can hear, you've heard me say this a few times, but there's that polyrhythmic tapping groove. There's the regular groove, and then there's this sort of, you can hear on the percussion, and I've played it myself. You can tell the percussionist is like tapping on the drum, and it creates a pretty cool effect. So very cool. And, Bob sings about ambush in the night, and he could be talking, singing. It could be a song about when he was ambushed in the night, right? And the next song is called Wake Up and Live. And again, more powerful lyrics here: fleeing from hate, mischief, and jealousy. There's a really charged groove here. There's some sax playing, and the saxophone player is Hadley Bennett, who's a famous saxophone player from Jamaica who played on, hundreds, if not thousands, of Jamaican records, including this one. Bob sings "Wake Up and Live Now," and you don't hear a lot of Al Anderson on this record, but you do hear you finally hear a little bit of electric guitar in the outro as it fades out. So that kind of wraps up the album. Again, the idea that Bob is trying to unite all African people, right? It's, just kind of running parallels with some other famous black leaders, and, the post-Malcolm X, when he had his Hajj, he went from sort of, like a black militant pro-black to, again, he came out of his Hajj with more of a universal message. And I think Bob had that same vision, right? To unify, and he lived that, he lived that. I wanted to read a quote from one of the I3's, Judy Mowat. She talks about the album, and she was really close with Bob, touring with him and recording with him. And this comes from the book called "So Much Things to Say: The Oral History of Bob Marley." This was written by Roger Steffens. So you can find this at your local bookstore. It's a pretty cool book. I love these I have a lot of, quite a few of these oral history books, because you're hearing from people directly, people who lived, with Bob, recorded music with him, toured with him. So some of these recollections are very intimate. So this is what the I3's singer Jody Mowat says about Survival. She says, The Survival album is precious to me because if you listen to the lyrical contents on that title song, it tells you everything that is happening in the world, the system that we're up against. It expresses everything that is happening and how we should be guided. Like Bob declares in the song, in this world that hold lifelong insecurity, nuclear misenergy, and it's a world that forces lifelong insecurity. And then you can really see why the people are on so much drugs, why people just decide to kill because they are insecure. Is a world that forces lifelong insecurity, and then he goes along to tell you the detours from that type of life and shows you where you can find peace and where you can find your outlet for your everlasting freedom. And so, that's kind of what, Judy's message there, her insight into the record, that's kind of what I got from, the song Babylon System, because Bob, building church and university, deceiving the people continually, it's like he's exposing, like the sort of the darker side, right? Again, maybe this system isn't as panned out as we like to hype it up to be. And again, 45 years later, the argument's still pretty strong in terms of, things that are happening with our global, climate change and just sort of the fracturing and both micro and macro, the political fracturing and sort of, sort of the the larger global community fracturing that's been going on. So definitely some truism, and I think Bob's work still resonates strongly. Looking at what was happening when he recorded the album versus what's happening today. It's it's a sort of a reflection, if you will. So I just wanted to mention in closing, we saw the Bob Marley movies, One Love, and it was again really fun. It's fun going to the movies and being able to sing, and it's not like we were singing loud, but feeling the music, feeling the love, if you will. I enjoy that. So after seeing the movie, I was kind of on a Bob Marley high after the movie. And so I watched this documentary again that came out in 2012, I believe. Yeah, 2012. This was, I just remember when this came out. It's really good. I just highly recommend that everyone, if you're watching this video and you're a Bob Marley fan, just watch this documentary again. It's really great. It goes, from his birth, his father and his mom, and it goes all the way through, and it's great. It's got great music. It's got great interviews, and I just highly recommend it. And it's very much like the oral history of Bob Marley. So I recommend both. So that wraps it up for this week, guys. I know I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but again, just a great album. And I've always loved So Much Trouble in the World and Babylon System, but I also like. From today's listening, I like One Drop. That was a song that I hadn't really listened to a lot. Again, highly recommended. I do recommend the Half Speed remasters. They're very very collectible, and so if you see this one, you're out, at your local record store, just grab it, take it home, listen to it. You'll love it. It's a great piece of work. So thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you next time. Please like and subscribe, and if you want to talk about today's show, anything I said on the show, mention your favorite track on the album, or why you like it, or any of the things we talked about, even political stuff in terms of the lyrics, like Bob taking that sort of anti-Babylon stance, if you will. So I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.